This is kind of like the Mount of Transfiguration. I want to build 3 tabernacles and stay. I've loved this morning, haven't you? What a wonderful time together in God's house. That first song that we sang, I was having microphone problems in the first service, and so I had to go to the back, so I heard it from back there about never losing your praise. And I said from back there that song was a 10. From up here it's a 12. I'm telling you, you ought to scoot up as close as you can because, I mean, man alive, I just loved that and all that we've sung and the words, the message that it has, the passion and enthusiasm, the spirit that it was sung with. I loved that, and it's been a good day. I want to live a blessed life, don't you? Just like we saw in the video, and I think we all do. And part of living a blessed life is, having a pure heart. And then that's what we've been talking about. We're in the series From the Bottom of My Heart. And today we're talking about what it means to really have a pure heart and to have a heart that is clean before God. And I've really sensed that in this series, the Lord's really been at work. I've appreciated some of the feedback and comments from different ones about what the Lord's been saying and doing in you. And I commend you for being here because it would be easy, to be quite honest, to stay away. Because sometimes this isn't easy. It's awkward, it's tense, it's uncomfortable. And last night I was sitting out here on Tipton on my way home and sitting at the traffic light. I could see the church sign and I couldn't read it from the distance, but then one big word popped up, the word greed. And it's just flashing in red. And I thought, man, that's enticing. That'll make people want to come to church to talk about greed. But then on the other hand, most of us don't think of ourselves as greedy. We'd think that's somebody else's issue, so we show up anyway. My encouragement to you this morning is to just say, Lord, talk to me. And that's what we've done in this series. With Psalm 139, 23 and 4, we just said, Lord, with the psalmist David, search my heart, see if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. And I want to encourage you to do that again, to pray what we've been praying throughout this series. Lord, create in me a clean heart. And search my heart. Show me if there's any offensive way. Help me to guard my heart. And that's what we've been talking about. And your presence here this morning shows a desire to go deeper in the Lord and a desire to allow Him to clean out and clear out those things in your heart that should not be there. That is not always easy. It is not always fun. It can be awkward. It can be embarrassing. But we need to keep our heart pure. So when it comes to the matters of the heart, we've discussed how things can get lodged in there that are unhealthy and that are not good, and then they become a source of serious heart problems. And so as we get started today, I want to ask you to think about what it is that's important in your life. Lori and I were traveling last night. We were talking about what's important and the true priorities. Don't give the answer you think you should give, but really, what are the priorities if you could just be totally, blatantly honest about it? And the truth, in our world, our hearts are pulled in so many different directions. I mean, isn't that true? I mean, career and family, fitness, possessions, hobbies, money, appearance, fame, recognition, God. And the list could go on and on and on. Our hearts are pulled in all these different directions. And today we're going to get into another very sensitive, very relevant topic when it comes to matters of the heart. And I'm going to warn you right up here on the front end, there's going to be a tendency to back off. Kind of a resistance maybe, a pushback. And, don't check out. Please be open to what it is the Lord has to say to you today. Just try to stay engaged. Because in some ways, this is one of the most difficult topics that we've really addressed up to this point because it strikes closer to home than most of us would like to admit. It can be very controversial, and I think it would be easy for somebody to walk in and hear this message and even question my motivation as a pastor in speaking this message to you. So before I get into the message, I want to talk about my motivation. I would tell you this series is about your heart, and it would have been easier to sidestep today's topic than to talk about it. And we actually discussed that in preparation for this service and meetings, and I've got to tell you, I could not do that with integrity. As we thought about this service and what needed to be said and done, and I believe that this is a major, major issue that lurks in the hearts of so many. And though it would be easier to sidestep it, we couldn't do it because we care deeply about the people that are a part of this church family, and we want to go deeper and grow deeper and be more like Him and allow our hearts to be clean and pure as He would have them to be. And whenever we come into God's presence and whenever we open His Word and we're ready to apply it to our lives, we need to be ready for change. And in a lot of ways, that's what we're about. Our mission statement says we're about making and maturing disciples. And the path to maturity, we believe, is helping people connect with God and one another, and then getting involved in some kind of growing environment, growing relationships, discipleship, and then learning to serve and give of ourselves to others. And your presence here today says, hey, I want to grow. I want to learn what it is the Lord has for me. And I want you to know my heart on this subject, because I really have spent an extended period of time in prayer over this message, because I want to make sure my heart is pure in my motivation for why I would even preach a message like this. And so I can come to you today in humility and love and obedience and say, I believe that this is what the Lord would have for us, and I have peace in my heart about it. But not just about the topic, but about preaching a message like this, because I think it'd be easy to say, what's that all about, or what are they trying to do here? Today we're going to talk about generosity and greed. And they're tough topics. I've never met anybody who would just come right out and say, you know what, I'm really a greedy person. I'm really a knothead when it comes to this. Most people don't say that. We see it as somebody else's problem. And we may think we could be more generous, but few people are going to say, I'm greedy. And that is because greed has a tendency to camouflage itself in our lives. We call ourselves careful, I'm a saver, I'm a good steward. It all sounds very positive, and we may even think of some of these things as a virtue, and that's because greed is difficult to see in the mirror. I can see it in somebody else, but it's very difficult to see in me. It's hard to see it in the mirror. And so we develop these blind spots, and that's why we need God's Spirit to faithfully reveal to us areas of our life that need attention, especially in regard to our heart. When we think of greed, sometimes we might have a tendency to picture Scrooge sitting behind this great big desk and money stacked high all over the place, this big tightwad, and sitting behind these stacks of money, unwilling to let any of it go, no compassion. And we would think, I'm not like that. But I want you to be open this morning on some things that the Lord might have to say to you as we talk about the subjects of greed and generosity. So let's get started with some observations. These are very basic and very simple. Greed, first of all, is rooted in selfishness. Greed is rooted in selfishness. Now, nobody again says they're greedy, but nobody says they're selfish. Most of the time, you don't hear people talk like that. But the truth of the matter is, selfishness is one of the root problems we face as human beings. It creates all kinds of havoc in marriages. It creates havoc in our relationship between us and God, because we tend toward being selfish people. And this is actually one of the smoke screens in our culture. I mean, selfishness is so prevalent in our culture, and yet a lot of people will use statements like this when it comes to why I don't come to church. They'll say, well, all they want is my money. They're just out to get my money. So I felt like it was important right at the beginning to put your mind at ease. This message is not about your money. It's not about wanting your money. There's no special offering. This series is all about the heart. We're talking about the heart. Today's message, it is about the heart. Greed is really a financial issue, not a financial issue. Greed is not a financial issue. It is a heart issue. And I want you to jot those observations down. It is rooted in selfishness. It is not a financial issue. It is a heart issue. And when I say it's not a financial issue, remember we talked about with jealousy and anger. I mean, those are issues of the heart. We can find all kinds of peripheral things, but when it comes right down to it, it reveals something going on in here. And so there's some very practical teaching that Jesus gives on this unhealthy condition of the heart in Luke chapter 12. And if you want to turn there in your Bible, I'm going to be reading from the New International Version, or if you want to open up your electronic device and YouVersion or whatever you're using and turn over to Luke chapter 12 in the NIV, here's what Jesus said. He said, watch out, with an exclamation point. Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. I mean, Jesus says, be on your guard. It is a serious warning, exclamation point, right there in the middle of it. Watch out. He's sending a message to us just as he spoke to those guys that day that had gathered there to hear him teach. And then he goes into this lesson about a specific kind of greed that is appropriate for every person in this room because of the world in which we live. Look what it says in verse 15. Going on, watch out, be on guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Jesus says that the good life has nothing to do with being wealthy, so be on guard against greed, that relentless, insatiable desire for more. And it's the exact opposite of what advertisers would like you to think, as they spend millions and millions of dollars to try to get you to get what they have, to think you need their product, to think you need more, bigger, better, whatever. And I would tell you to jot this down because I think it's important. Greed is driven by the assumption that life equals the acquisition of stuff. Greed is driven by the assumption that life equals the acquisition of stuff. More stuff, bigger stuff, better stuff, shinier stuff. I have 3 and need 3 more kinds of that stuff. I mean, just more and more and more, bigger and better, whatever. Somebody asks us to make a donation and we tell them, we can't do that. We don't have the money. But you know what? Not having the money does not stop us from upgrading our own personal lifestyle. When we talk about greed, I think it is important to realize that it's really a condemnation against the American culture as a whole. And it affects every person here in this room. And I want you to get it in your head and get it etched in your heart and in your mind. Greed is not a financial issue. It is so much broader than that. It is a heart issue. That's why we need to talk about it, and that's why it was important to include this message in the series. Greed is why there's such a vast difference between our attitude about spending and our attitude about giving. There's a big difference in our attitude. We readily spend money we don't have on things we don't need. That's nothing new. But giving decisions are made from a totally different perspective than that. Greed is why I can't give $100 to this special need, but I can be $4,000 in credit card debt. It's a greed problem. And here's the deception that we need to be aware of. We feel moved. We hear a need. Somebody tells us about a situation, a circumstance, a person. We see it on Facebook or on email, or somebody talks to us face to face. We feel moved. We feel compassionate. We feel sorry, and we really want to help. We really want to give. We feel the need to be generous, but we just can't seem to write the check. We fool ourselves into believing that our heart is good because we have all these feelings, just feelings. And we've convinced ourselves because of those feelings, our heart is right. And then we turn around and make foolish, frivolous financial decisions because it's about me and about my comfort and about my lifestyle and about my enjoyment and about my desire. And it's about where I live, and it's about what I drive and what I wear and what I sit on and all these different things, what my kids want, and on it goes. What is that? What is it? I think Jesus would tell us it's a kind of greed. And it's not a money issue, so don't even go there. It is a heart issue, and we have to talk about it as we talk about more things that get lodged and stuck deep within our heart. In your notes, the heart is the filter through which you make all of your financial, relationship, and kingdom decisions. If you don't have a place to write that down, I would encourage you to still fill in that statement. The heart, it is the filter through which you make all of your financial, your relationship, and your kingdom decisions. Now, as we've talked about this so far, I want to ask you to do a little self-evaluation. How does it make you feel? Don't answer out loud. But, the look on your face, the feeling, the tension you feel inside, how does it make you feel to talk about what we're talking about? Are you thinking, man, I wish I would have seen the sign that said greed. I might have stayed home. Are you wishing you would have checked out? Are you wishing you'd have worked in the nursery today? Do you feel mad? Do you feel tension? Do you feel stress? Are you pulled? I mean, could these things that you're feeling, this discomfort that maybe you didn't feel last week or the week before, could this discomfort be an indicator that there may be greed lodged deep within your heart? What we're going to talk about today is a very liberating principle. Down deep inside, I believe every person here wants to have a more generous heart. I know certainly the majority of you and know most of your families, and we've been together for almost 10 years, and I look around and say, you know what, they're good people. I think everybody here wants to have a more generous heart. I actually believe that if I said, you know what, I've got a prayer, and if we all pray it, we'll have a more generous heart. I believe everybody'd say, hey, I'm in, I'll pray the prayer. Where do I sign up? Let's all pray the prayer. And I think everybody's in with that. But in the world we live in, every day you are made more and more aware of what you don't have, what you should have, and what you actually need. It didn't used to be that way. And there's something within all of us that knows it's a struggle. You know, there are times you go to the mall or to the hardware store or the electronic store, and you have to look for a while to find what it is you need that you didn't know you need. You have to put some effort into it. You can't find it just like that, but then you'll see it after you've been in there for a few hours, right? We all can relate. We know what that's like. Some of you want to give and you can't because you're so bogged down with debt and credit cards and all this stuff. My question is, how long has it been that way? And when is it going to change? When has it ever changed? Do you have a plan to change it? We continue on this path if we're not careful for a long, long time. And why will I spend money that I don't have on me, but I won't even spend the little I have on somebody else? My question is, would you let the Lord change your heart today? This will be difficult for some, but you have to do something to get your heart in shape as it relates to the matter of greed. And we're going to look at another passage. If you turn over to Matthew chapter 6, this is a command Jesus gave, and it's going to speak right to the heart of the matter. Most of you are familiar with it. You've seen it before. It's in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Jesus said, "Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal." Now, when you look at that, it's like, does that mean don't have a savings account? Does that mean that I shouldn't save up for my kids' college fund? Does that mean I shouldn't plan for retirement? Is that a case to be made there for not having anything and living on the street? Is that what that's all about? Well, I don't think so. I believe Jesus is addressing that incessant pursuit of newer and bigger and better and brighter and shinier and all of that. He continues on in verse 20. He says, "Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal." And then he's about to get to the reason for storing up and treasure in heaven and not storing up treasure on earth. And you would think this is all going to be about needs. I think we've all heard our mothers say, you know, somebody has these needs over in another far-off country, and you're going to think, you know, Jesus would surely say it's all about the needs. I mean, people are hurting and people are starving, and there's all kinds of needs out there all around us, and those are all good reasons to give. But what's interesting, Jesus doesn't go there. Instead, he takes up this powerful principle that has the potential to do incredibly positive things in your heart today and in my heart. And he teaches a principle that we would all be wise not to forget, and it will keep your heart free from greed. It'll keep our hearts clear. He tells us why we should store up treasure in heaven. Verse 21. He says, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." That's the part where he could have said, you know, because you need to help these people in need. There's a lot of things going. He doesn't go there. He says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. This is a principle at work that could turn your life literally upside down, turn it around, turn your marriage around, turn your finances around. It could do incredible things in your heart. And here's how it works. If you want to know where your heart really is, not where you say it is, but where your heart really is, all you need to do is follow the money trail. Now, we don't like this, but it's the truth. If you want to know where your heart is, if you want to know what your true priorities are, all you need to do is follow the money trail. Look at the check register, look at the credit card statement, look at the bank statement, log into your online banking this afternoon. You may have all kinds of feelings, and you may have your heart going out to all kinds of needs. But you cannot trust any of that at all? What are you doing with your money and with your assets? And that will tell you where your heart is. That's why somebody says, you know, I've never heard of this company, but I bought a little stock the other day, and now I'm online checking it out in the morning, I'm checking it out in the evening, I'm watching for them on the news, I'm reading in the paper, I'm listening, I'm paying attention to all this stuff about that company. Why? Because your heart goes out, because you have invested, you've put your money there. Your heart, your time, and your attention, it all follows your money. Your heart, time, and attention, they all follow your money. And here's the thing that I want you to get, because this is so critical to everything else. God is not really all that interested, I don't think, in your money, because you're going to leave it all here anyway. He can take it all away today if He wants to. What He is interested in is what? It's your heart. That's the big deal. That's the issue. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be also. This is a powerful and profound biblical principle. And the way you strip your heart of greed is by making some difficult decisions. You don't get rid of greed simply by praying that greed will go away. To get rid of greed, you have to make some choices. You must make a conscious, willful decision to end the acquisition of stuff, the shop till you drop mentality, and make a strategic decision to systematically begin spending and giving and investing money and resources outside of your personal kingdom, outside of my personal kingdom. And in time, what happens is your heart will follow, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And our heart is His primary concern. Not your billfold, not your purse, not your credit card, not your dollars. It's your heart that is God's concern. And your money and your possessions have the potential to redirect your heart. Systematic generosity is how you break the power of greed in your heart. And it is true that every facet of your life is impacted by your perspective on money. Every facet of your life is affected and impacted by your perspective on money. And I tell you, this is not a financial message, because greed is not a financial issue. It is a heart issue. That's why we couldn't not talk about it. Generosity is what breaks the power of greed in the human heart. Now, when you stop and give this consideration, it is a very, very, very liberating principle. God wants us to be free. We want to be free, and this is so liberating, and it will free us. And I'm going to show you a practical way to apply this principle, and it's how you break the power of greed. It's how you keep it under control. It's how you balance your lifestyle. You see, I decide up front to take a percentage of my income, and before I fund my kingdom, before I fund my lifestyle, before I upgrade me, my house, my car, my clothes, my iPod, my stuff, I'm going to take a percentage of my income and I'm going to move it outside my kingdom. I'm going to get it away from me. Now the first check or checks that I write, they're going outside my kingdom to fund things that have nothing to do with me, nothing to improve me, nothing to enhance my lifestyle. That automatically helps us get the right priorities in place, and this means I'm putting someone else or someone else's ahead of mine, ahead of me. And if you're sitting here saying, that offends me, I don't like it, every preacher's all the same, that's all they want, every time I come, that's all they talk about is money. If that's what you're thinking, you're not paying attention. Because this is not about the money. It's about the heart. And it has to be addressed. And if you're scared or offended in some way, I wonder, is it because you're greedy? I'm not calling you greedy. And folks, let me tell you something. As I'm working on this series, you know, there's never a time where I preach a message where I just flippantly put it out there and don't stop and think about, how does that relate to me? And the Lord works on me, and I try to be very upfront and honest about that as we go along, because this affects every person in this room in some way, shape, and form because of the culture in which we live. And all kinds of junk in a series like this that we're doing from the bottom of my heart, all kinds of garbage begins to surface when you start stirring around in the heart. When you start going to those dark corners and those cracks and crevices in our heart where things got lodged there maybe a long time ago, and it's been allowed to remain because we didn't know how to guard our heart, we didn't know how to protect our heart, we didn't know how to clear or clean out our heart, and so those things exist. And that's why this is so important. And that's why we have to say, Lord, turn on the searchlight of my soul. Turn the light on in my heart. Expose those dark places. Expose those things that are there that you don't want to be there. And you know what? I really do believe this. I believe it's not only the things that he doesn't want to be there. I think it's things we don't want to be there either. I think there are things in our hearts that as we stir around and those things begin to percolate to the top, we look at those things and think, nobody here says I want to be a greedy person. But sometimes we don't think of it from that perspective. We've never given it the consideration, and it helps us because most of the time, a lot of us, that are kind of anti some of this, we're saying, well, every time I'd hear a message like this, I would just check out, I'd push back, I'd resist, and you said don't do it, and so I tried not to, but it's starting to click with me now because I realize it's not really about money, and it's not really about stuff, it's about my heart, and all of a sudden it looks different to you today. See, we all have a decision to make. Perhaps God has turned that light on in your heart and mind and exposed something you didn't even know was there. And so the question is, do you allow it to remain or do you do something about it? And I said it a little earlier, we set the direction of our heart. We're not helpless. I mean, jealousy or, anger, love, these things, we choose to set the direction of our heart. And you can exercise your way out of greed. It's not as simple as a prayer. I wish it was, but it is a decision. And there is some action we can take. And I want to give you some application that will help. First, I would encourage you to make generosity a priority in your life. That's a choice you can make. You have to make a conscious, willful choice. It won't just happen. You won't do it automatically. We're not inclined that way necessarily by human nature. We are inclined the opposite way. We are inclined toward greed. We are inclined toward selfishness. But I make generosity a priority. Secondly, I choose to find a percentage that I'm willing to give. I choose a percentage that I'm going to give. And I start there. And then I consistently give it away. I consistently move it outside my kingdom. And I make that the beginning. That's where I start. And some of you know the story about J.C. Penney, not the store, but the person, the guy that actually founded it. I'm pretty sure his name was James Cash Penney, J.C. Penney, and he was a real human being that actually lived. He started the store. And you know what? He started out by giving 10% of his income to the Lord and to charity and to meaningful causes outside his kingdom. And he incrementally and steadily and consistently kept moving it up, moving it up, moving it up, giving a little more, a little more, a little more. And by the time he died, it is a documented fact, J.C. Penney was giving away 90% and living on 10%. Now, some of you say, well, if I made as much money as J.C. Penney, I'd give 90% too. Is it possible, just thinking, that the reason he had so much was because he got it right before he had so much? A lot of times we get it backwards and we kind of get this whole thing confused. See, the average American gives about 2% of their income away, and yet we have more debt than just about any other country in the world. And that is true as a nation, and it is true individually as well. What is that? Somebody tell me, what is that? That's greed. Oh, we hate to say it. We hate to admit it. We hate to talk about it, but it's the truth. And when we hear it like that, we all know it's true. But we have the opportunity to give ourselves out of it and allow God to do something extraordinary, not in our finances, but in our heart. Because like Solomon said, from the heart come all the issues we face in life. That's why we have to be careful to guard our heart. I love you. I want you to be free. For some of you today, this morning, this message, it could be the final frontier in your spiritual life, the last battlefield before you come to the place of full surrender, not of your finances, but of your heart to the Lord. Today could be that day for some. This has been one of the things that has held you down, and you know it and you realize it, and greed is what kept your heart from being fully surrendered to God. But today you see it in a different light. I tell you that God can use the power of generous giving to break the power of greed in your heart. I believe that with every fiber of my being, that God can use the power of generous giving to break the power of greed in your heart. And here's the key: reallocating your assets redirects your heart. Try it sometime. When you give your resources, all of a sudden you begin to be more interested, and your heart follows your dollars. Your heart follows those resources. It is a powerful, powerful biblical principle. And it's all about guarding your heart. We talked in the first day, Lord, guard my heart. Teach me to guard my heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Would you bow with me as we pray? Father, it's true. The heart is the wellspring. Solomon said it, the wisest man that ever lived. He said, above all the other things I've said, beyond all the other things I've taught, above all else, guard your heart. It's the wellspring of life. You taught us that from the heart come all kinds of things that can corrupt a person, and it's all rooted in the heart. And so today, as we've dug around and stirred in the heart a little bit more, another issue has surfaced, and we're not going to get to every issue. We're not even going to try. But my heart is that we learn how to protect and guard and clear out and clean out our hearts, that we can keep them clean and pure before you, that we would be open to any one of dozens and dozens and probably hundreds and even thousands of things that can get stuck there, and we would realize, you know what, that does not need to be there. I've got to get that out of there. That we would take the principles we're learning now and we would apply it. And as it comes to this matter of greed and generosity, help us to not just try to pray our way out of it, but help us to take the steps that we need to take to exercise our way out of it and follow the instructions and the principles that are found in your word. And we will give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.